Evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lake Mills City Council for January 16th. I'll call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Curler?
Here.
Mr. Waters?
Here.
Mrs. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Quidnow?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Thank you.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the council member board reports and acceptance of meeting minutes. So we have city council meeting minutes from December 19th of 2023 and the Parks Board minutes from November 15th, 2023. Are there any comments or corrections on any of these? No? Okay, so seeing none, we will accept those into the record. Next agenda item is the Joint Rock Lake Committee. It's time for our monthly report, and so we have Wendy Davies here for that tonight.
Hi. I don't have we've been kind of quiet since we haven't worked on the lake level reporting and project, but things we have done, our biggest project right now has been educational articles that I hope you'll get a copy of. I sent them later today to Misty, and there's 3 of them that we're going to have posted in the leader. Safety on the ice, the problem with ash, and we love our pets, but. So I think those will be nice. They're pretty much lifted right out of the DNR information. We don't want to try and recreate research that we don't know how to do. And the pet things came right out of the ordinance of the city and the town, so people can read those. We're keeping informed of the group investigating the development or the potential development of a lake district. And we're not on a committee, but we feel we just need to keep informed and provide input where we can and bring information to you as we can. We're hoping to attend the Parks Board meeting tomorrow night, talking about the mill pond, or the mill pond dredging and channel dredging. We continue to attend the RLIA meetings as we can also to keep up to date with their activities. So where we can coordinate, it would be nice that we can. We've been staying informed of the potential study regarding the Marsh Lake in regards to the lake levels being raised earlier in the season, seeing where that goes. There's a convention coming up for us, and we'll probably decide who's going to go to that in the near future, and that's the Wisconsin Lakes and the Lakes Convention. It's in Stevens Point, and it's very, very informative. There's lots of sessions. There's so many sessions, it's hard to decide what to go to. You know, invasive species, it's just tons of information. So we'll be deciding who will go to that, and that's on April 8th. And this year, it's the 50th anniversary of what they call Chapter 33, which is the relationship between lake owners and Wisconsin government. So there's a lot more to talk about that, but it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a good learning experience for any of us that have gone. I've gone to the convention twice. And as always, if there's anything you'd like us to research on or study on or give you information on, we're happy to do it. And that's all I have to report. If you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions about Joint Rock Lake Committee? Wendy, I have a quick question. I know there's been some ongoing conversations with city staff about studies and some conversations with DNR. Is the Joint Rock Lake Committee in the loop on those? Are you being included in correspondence with DNR?
After the fact, we've gotten information on them, yeah. And I've talked to, I don't really know who's coordinating them. I probably need to talk to the county also, because they represent the DNR a lot in information like that. But I think we should be. So hopefully that'll maybe get turned around. I'll try and stay more ahead of it, because I think it's important. That has to do with the Marsh Lake study. I think that's what those meetings have been about, that potential investigation.
Great, and I'm just thinking about your committee's role in terms of recommending policy. I want to make sure that you're, in the loop on some of those conversations. So Drake, as you're hearing about some of that too, maybe you can keep Wendy as the chair in the loop.
That'd be great.
Any other questions for Wendy? Okay, thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is correspondence. Mr. Fields, I'll start with you.
All right, I have a few of them. First was email on the wastewater treatment plant. Constituent contacted me about, I think we all might have got this one, about Public Works Board, kind of changing direction on that one. Email on the Lake Mills Fire Department award banquet coming up here in a couple of weeks. So I got back to the chief on that one. Got an email about the cottage hotel on South Main Street from a neighbor, and the Joint Rock Lake Committee articles that were forwarded to us just before the meeting today. That's it for me.
Thank you. Ms. Quidna?
Can I go last?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll switch sides then. Mrs. Bishop?
Okay, I think I had exactly the same. So I had Ms. Davis email with the articles. I had an email about the Main Street rezoning. I had an invitation from the fire chief for their annual awards event. And then I had an email about the wastewater treatment plant.
Great. Mr. Waters?
I was having some email troubles when I got back in town this week. So I'm kind of out of the loop, to be honest, but I did get the email on the Bayberry.
Okay, great.
I'm having troubles with my email right now, so I apologize. Perhaps that's something, I'm assuming that I've received similar correspondence. If there's any different correspondence, I'll make a note of it later.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Sounds good. I had all the same correspondence that's previously been mentioned that I think was shared with everyone. I got a couple of individual contacts about Rock Lake water levels. I received numerous compliments on the lights in Commons Park over the holidays, and so I want to give thanks to the private citizens and organizations who donated to enhance those, and to our city staff for everything that they did in Commons Park. It still looks beautiful. So that's been a real asset for us over the holidays. I also had some correspondence about a community center, senior center idea at Arlac. I attended the Lake Management District exploratory meeting that we were all invited to. I attended the last Joint Rock Lake Committee meeting, and I also attended the town board to provide more information about our ladder truck purchase from last month. Okay, Michelle, you don't have anything further then?
Nope.
Okay.
Still being difficult. No, it's still being difficult.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. I guess one other thing I would like to mention in the area of kudos is just thank you to our city staff for their tremendous work with the power outages, the snow emergencies, cold weather, keeping our fingers crossed that we're hopefully moving our way into warmer temperatures. But thank you for all the city staff for being responsive to those emergencies and challenges. Okay, we're on to item number 7, which is questions and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comments may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meetings law discourages actions by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided. If there's anyone attending online, please type your name and address in the chat feature. Okay, so would anyone like to provide public comment this evening?
My name is John Kopp. I live at 269 South Main Street. The Cottage Hotel is next door, and I'm dead set against the rezoning for numerous reasons. most of which I outlined in the email to all of you earlier. Mr. Luce and Mr. Boyks own 18 properties in and around Lake Mills. They have a history of poor maintenance. If you look at the Fargo mansion, it's missing shingles. They've been missing for months. The brick building over on Madison Street, roof has been bad for many, many years. All of these things lead up to very poor maintenance, a history of poor maintenance. There used to be a building on Main Street, used to be a hotel next door to the gas station. And because of lack of maintenance on the building, eventually all the tenants had to move out, and eventually it was raised. I feel that the cottage hotel is going to go the same way. You look at especially the site that we live on, there's got to be a half dozen windows that have been missing for years. Even while tenants were living there, windows were missing. Cold winter, cold snap like we have now, froze the pipes, went through the ceiling into a tenant's room, and there was big waterfall out the front of the building. You look at all the buildings downtown, the brick buildings that he owns, the Grist, the Mercantile, the Opera House. They all have poor brick that looks like it's going to fall out at any time. The parapet on the Opera Hall looks pretty bad. If this continues and this gets approved, what's going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years? We're going to be right back in the same situation we're in now. You're going to be after him to do something about it. He paints the building to make it look nice. He spray painted it, painted over all of the defects of the building, painted over windows, just to make it look nice for the Planning Commission meeting. He has a history of poor maintenance, and I feel that that is going to continue with this building. We've lived there over 40 years, and up until Barry owned it, the maintenance was pretty decent on the building, and it's just gone downhill ever since. 9 apartments in there. I don't see how that can be economically sound. It just doesn't make sense. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kopp?
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment tonight? Okay, I don't see anyone, and I don't see anyone online, so we will close the question and public comment period, and we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the city manager's report.
Several items included in your packet, a regular monthly report from myself, making note of some items that you'll be seeing in the next couple of meetings, as well as other general updates, as well as some the meetings that I've attended recently. There's also some financial information, as well as your regular Ryan Brothers Ambulance monthly report. If there's any questions, happy to help.
Mr. Daly, I do not see your monthly report in our attachments, so I wonder if maybe that got overlooked.
Could you try hitting refresh, maybe? I see it.
Oh, you see it. Okay, I will try refresh. It's just added in the last couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
Added today.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let me make sure I'm following the most current agenda. Okay, great. Anything you want to highlight in your monthly report?
The ARPA requests from departments will be at the next meeting, February 6th meeting, and then working on both the RFP for municipal engineering services and the RFP for planning services. And we'll have that done in February, whether at the February 6th or February 20th meeting for the council to authorize to send those out. Send those requests for proposals out to solicit responses. We are going to begin the dredging of the channel. There's enough adequate frost in the ground to begin that project, so we will you'll start seeing some work out there. Ryan Brothers did begin service to a portion of the town of Aztalan that joined the EMS contract. That started on January 1, 2024. Staff is beginning to layer the ice skating rinks this week, so you'll see them both at Sandy Beach and in Commons Park. Election update, the city of Lake Mills will not have a February primary, so our first election will not occur until April. So there's no primary for any of the elected offices in February. And we did send an advertisement for the sale of the fire engine. So we sent that to the leader as well as to specific fire-related professional organizations, listservs, things of that nature to solicit bids to purchase that. That will ultimately come to the city council for approval of the sale. So we will wait and see where that comes back, and obviously we reserve the right to reject any and all bids that we receive if we think they're inadequate. And finally, the Police and Fire Commission did approve the appointment of a new police officer. That officer is currently in the academy. So they will go through that. It's about 16 weeks, and they'll begin their field training in May/June.
Great. Are there any questions for the city manager this evening? Mr. Waters?
I have a quick statement. I didn't have a chance to review the financial statements because when I prepared for this meeting on Sunday, they weren't online yet. So I guess I need to still review that a little bit further. I can always get with the treasurer if there's any questions and follow up on that.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Daly, I had a quick follow-up on the channel dredging, if you know. So that's the channel between Rock Lake proper and leading under Ferry Drive into the Mill Pond. Do you know the timeline of that and whether the permit requires any management of suspended material so that it doesn't move into other areas of the waterway?
I don't know the details of it. Unfortunately, Director Schreiner had a personal issue come up that he wasn't able to join us tonight. I do know we will be hauling material off site away from it. That's one of the reasons why we needed to wait until there was frost in the ground in order to mitigate the erosion of the area while we're completing the work. But I can have Director Schreiner follow up with details on the specific schedule of that project and what it will entail.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, someone was mentioning to me they thought that perhaps there would be a lot of resuspended material, but I thought perhaps time of year and the water level being lower, that would be minimized, and maybe there are some permit requirements that would also help address that. So, okay, thank you. Okay, so we are finished with the city manager's report. We'll move on to council business. And our first item tonight is a presentation on the LD Fargo Library expansion project update. So I'll ask Director Saylor to come up and get that presentation started for us.
Thank you. So I'm Gerard. I work at the library, and we've had FEH architects coming over. You can come on up. Cole Henson is one of the architects, as is Greg Baum, and Sarah Jansen is, I can't remember your title.
I'm the interior designer.
Interior designer. And so Cole is going to be the lead, but basically he's going to be filling you in. They've pretty much completed their work, kind of give you some background on that and what the results were, and then answer any questions you have. And I didn't get the slideshow in on time, but Dwayne was gracious enough to make copies, and I'll pass those out to you as well.
Thank you. Welcome.
So what you're going to hand out is different than what's in the note in our agenda notes?
Yeah, so what I sent out earlier was a booklet, which was more in depth. And this was the presentation that he sent me earlier today that they're going to be talking from tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe we can have that added to the agenda afterwards, just so that citizens can see it as well. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. As Gerard mentioned, we're FEH Design. I'm Cole Henson with FEH Design, architect. This is Greg Baum, library consultant with FEH Design, and Sarah Jansen, our interiors designer with FEH Design. And we have a short presentation. You have it in front of you, the printout of the PowerPoint presentation that we're sharing. We're talking through two focal points related to the LD Fargo Lake Mills Library. And that is the growth needs and some of the research and development we've done for the need and the reasoning behind the need for the growth and expansion of the library. And then the second portion is conceptual plans and elevations of the project. Now, although the public doesn't have immediate visual access to the presentation and the concept plans, this is good because we can encourage everybody to go visit the library and see the presentation in person for themselves. Gerard will have all of those conceptual images and plans, and again, they are conceptual at this point, but it's a good opportunity to go visit the library and see what the public, as well as we as the design team, have developed in terms of architecture that really meets the historic qualities and represents a good relationship to the existing treasure and gem, which is the LD Fargo Library as it exists today. And with that, I'll just start with a few points. One of the things that I think is really important to stress with the potential expansion of the LD Fargo Library is that this is a vision and a need that fits, it is essentially integral to the strategic plan, the 2022 strategic plan that Lake Mills has published on the website. There are several items that the library provides to enhance those strategic needs and plan for the city. And Greg will briefly mention a few of those after I start with the main point, and that's fostering the quality of life. That is a major focus of the strategic plan. The Harwood Institute for Public Innovation is a national organization that publishes information about communities' quality of life, and it actually produces performance data on what quality of life is and needs to be for communities. The two major components that contribute to the quality of life as defined in the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation's assessment is, number one, an abundance of community gatherings. Number two, organized space for interaction. And I'll say with that, an expanded library would greatly contribute to both of those components. Again, that's an abundance of community gatherings and organized spaces for interaction. Greg, will you speak to a few of the strategic plan items that we've listed?
Sure. So in your strategic plan, you did a SWOT analysis and you listed several items in there. And I think the library has the ability to help contribute to either your strengths, your weaknesses, and your opportunities that you have. One of them was mentioned as diversity in your community. And I think, again, a library is one of the best places that you can address diversity in terms of providing services to everybody. And there's really not the greatest opportunity in the current layout for those diversity types of programs and things to happen. There just isn't physical space to accommodate those. They have one meeting room that really can only serve one size and one purpose, and it's not really allowed to be able to do the types of programming and the types of things that the staff really need to get into. You also talked in your strategic plan SWOT analysis about opportunities and offering other services. And I think, again, the library has a great opportunity to provide gathering spaces, working spaces, being a leader in terms of technology, being able to Zoomify the library in a way that people can use the library and the technology that exists out there by providing the type of facility and room within the library to accommodate those high-tech kinds of operations. You also mentioned in your SWOT analysis about being I guess it's a small town, but within the metropolitan area. So to me, the gist of that is that people really want to live here for the quality of life in the school district that you have and for all of the things that you can do to raise a family. I think the library can provide the types of spaces and facilities that allow people to work from home and still have a job in Madison and Chicago or Milwaukee, but still be able to live in the community that they choose. So again, I think the library has the ability to allow that to happen. Again, community engagement is another component that we mentioned once before. Resident retention through providing the types of meeting spaces and gathering spaces that currently don't exist. And also, we'll talk a little bit in a moment about just the size of the library itself and where it ranks within the kind of the overall state perspective. Cole, do you want me to keep going?
Go ahead.
Where's the slide? Which one?
The down arrow.
So the Department of Public Institute statewide library facilities study is something that our company just completed this past year in 2023. And we basically had the opportunity to interview 300 library institutions around the state. And two weaknesses really kind of showed up based on where the LD Fargo library kinds of lines up against its peers. A lack of space for library collections and a lack of space for meeting activities. And programming space goes along with the activities. And this is just based on what everybody else in the state is doing. And right now, those are some significant shortfalls that this library building currently has. And it's not a fault of how you're running your library or doing your business, it's just the lack of adequate physical space. So that's kind of what we've kind of learned from doing that statewide study. You want me to go into this too, or do you want to do this?
I can mention briefly, yeah.
Go ahead.
So one of the reasons that we were engaged for the state needs assessment as well as for Lake Mills assessment with the LD Fargo Library is to assess some critical data that helps us analyze if these are the deficiencies, what's the solution? And what we're able to do with a space planning tool that we've developed is actually look at collections of the library, look at the population and the expected growth of the city, the population, the design population that the actual library is serving. And within that, assessing the collections, whether that's, and collections as the actual volumes that per capita that the library has. That's adult collections, it's children's collections, it's teen, young adult collections. Another component is analyzing the staff areas, the storage areas, the miscellaneous spaces. Are they sized appropriately for the design population and the current national trends and requirements that help facilitate library design? And meeting spaces is also part of that assessment. And if you remember back to the original slide, we talked about gathering spaces being a critical element as a quality of life for communities and a space for spaces that can be programmed for different variety of uses, all of which the library actually does provide in a certain capacity. And when we did this, this program analysis, this space evaluation, we looked at the existing square footage, which was 11,000 square feet, and based on looking at that data and meeting the needs of the design population that the library is serving in the 21st century, we calculated that an appropriate square footage for the library would be around 21,000 to 22,000 square feet. So our next step as part of that process was developing some conceptual layouts that helped accommodate that expansion. And I will let Sarah talk to a few points for the site plan. We're not going to talk too much about this actual site plan and the floor plan. I want to reserve that for interested individuals going and visiting the library to see how those the site plan and the space planning for the floor, first floor, basement, and second floor are developing, and at least from a conceptual phase. And I'm going to let Sarah speak to a few of the site features that we're incorporating or proposing to incorporate. And I say we, this was a collaborative effort between FEH Design, the library board and the community as part of some design charrettes previously done, originally in 2020 and following up in 2023. So Sarah, will you speak to a few of these site features that we discussed incorporating, as well as some of the features of the floor plans as well?
Before you go, is there supposed to be a presentation going on up there that is different than what we have?
You mean the slideshow?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get the slideshow over to Dave or Misty or Madison
Okay.
in time for them to get in the packet.
All right, thank you.
So that's why Dwayne had the printouts.
Okay, so if you're on the page that says conceptual plans, and then you can see kind of the overall building, you can see that we're not moving the parking lot, but we are extending the building towards the back. And if you go to the next page, you can see the first floor. So there is a line that is bordering around the outside, which is labeled existing building footprint. So you can see how much we would suggest to expand to that on the first floor. On this floor, we're keeping the adult collections. We're also making sure to add a lot of rooms where people can have meetings or study areas. We're keeping the original historic stairway that will then be usable, and everyone can enjoy the beauty of that. There's a lot more going on in the second floor. You can see that the part that's existing right now is much smaller, and we'll be adding on a much larger second floor. This floor will now be where the children's collection and the teens collection would be. We're moving them out of the basement, which I know they will be really happy about. And you can see there's a very large program room there that can accommodate all the types of meetings that you would be looking to have. And again, there's more study rooms and places to meet. Finally, the last page is the basement, which isn't so exciting, but we're keeping the basement where it is, and it will provide with a lot more storage.
Quick question. On floor 2, you have a multipurpose room. What are some of the activities that would take place in a multipurpose room?
My understanding in the multipurpose room, it can be any sort of meeting, and you can reserve that space. But it also be used a lot for the children's programming that happens there at the library, the reading the children and those types of things. It's dividable. And it is dividable so that there that dash line through it can become 2 rooms so that you can use it at the same time.
So I see the existing stage, and off to the left, there's a program room. Is the program room part of the multipurpose room?
So yeah, that dash line there, that's a folding wall that we could open and close depending on how many people you want to sit in the space.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Can I ask you a question? The teens area, so to give you some context here, I'm a high school teacher. And I spend a lot of time with teenagers. And one thing I can tell you is that I think teenagers really want to be treated like adults, even though they're not. One of the things when I was looking at the second floor plan, just to think about, is that perhaps the teen area is not in a conducive place for studying or doing anything that feels private. I see that they're over by the preschool collection, and I can assure you that not a lot of teens want to have preschoolers running around. Not only that, but they want some level of privacy. So I had a couple of ideas regarding where that could look, how that could look and where that could go, but I don't want to use up your time to do that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'd be happy to help.
Oh, of course, yes. We really love the feedback.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before we move on to the other floors here?
Yes. go
On
ahead.
the main map overview showing the whole property, I see the bioretention area. Besides Mr. Saylor, has anybody been over to the property in the last 3 or 4 days?
In the last 3 or 4 days?
Yes.
No, we haven't looked at it in the
Okay,
last 3 or
the
4 days.
snow removal plan with the snow that we had is not going to fit in this bioretention area. It's just not. And I don't know if the Bank of Lake Mills property that's adjacent, like their pile of snow is probably 12 feet high, lining the whole back portion of the property. And I don't know if it actually encroaches on our property or not. But then that's combined obviously up against with like our own snow removal on the city side. So I have concerns about, I think it's great that there's added parking, but I don't know that that's going to work for some scenarios.
Yes, no, that's great feedback, and there are a lot of very technical logistics that we dial into, especially with civil teams, that works out appropriate sizing of that, depth of that, snow removal. It really is a holistic process of assessing all seasons from a site perspective, from a building perspective. So I agree 100% that would certainly be part of the technical design process were we to move forward down the road.
Sorry, I have another question, perhaps. I noticed that there's 2 mechanical rooms, and one in the basement in the old area and one that is in a new area. Is there going to actually be 2 mechanical rooms, and for what purpose?
Great question. Yes, so conceptually, we've blocked out a few areas that would be good candidates for locating mechanical rooms. Much of the basement will accommodate that, and a part of the design, some of the conceptual look and feel that you'll see on the last pages captures an area of roof that we could dedicate to large mechanical equipment, which allows us to free up some interior space. We can't get all the mechanical equipment on the roof, but we can designate a good portion of it to the exterior, whether that's a side yard or the roof. All of that, again, is part of the detailed technical design process down the road, but they are items that we would address from a square footage perspective. Just for everyone's knowledge, when we do calculate square footages and for sizing the building, along with these spaces and space needs program, we essentially allocate about 30 to 40% of the building space for just mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment. The mechanical obviously being the largest elements. So when you think about buildings such as this and you look at square footages, 30 to 40% of that square footage is actually dedicated to mechanical equipment. And our job as designers is to make sure nobody ever notices that those mechanical rooms and mechanical equipment are even there, but have good access to service them as needed. And I would actually like to bring up, we've wrapped up the presentation for the intents and purposes that we were discussing, but I would like to bring up the existing facility. And as we start talking about costs of an expansion to a facility, obviously that will be expansion plus renovation of the existing. If you think about the life cycle and lifetime of a building, we've got a treasure of a library that was built in 1902 and has been added on, but continues to need maintenance and updates. And so the library has been very well preserved. Obviously, we've had finish updates, we've had mechanical, electrical, plumbing equipment updates done over the years, and furniture updates. But there's a life cycle to all of those materials and all those systems as well. And so part of the previous assessments that we've done, which are in booklets at the library for the public to look at, is what's the longevity and the lifespan remaining in those systems, whether that's mechanical and electrical systems or the finishes, the exterior wear and tear. And so part of our facility assessment was looking at what's the cost of repairing and maintaining the building that needs to happen tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now. And that number is, based on what we calculated as part of the facility assessment, is around $350,000 for just basic maintenance and upgrades that are critical to maintaining the longevity of the building in the future. And that becomes a good discussion point of looking at upgrades versus adding, doing an expansion or a renovation project, because when you do a renovation or an expansion project, you're cutting out the cost of those upgrades because you're incorporating it into the actual renovation or expansion, rather than having to spend that as a line item just to keep it operating as a facility from year to year. And go ahead.
Is that the end of the presentation?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, we had a few more pages here, so I didn't know if you were all done.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the remainder of the presentation is look and feel, conceptual look and feel of the building. Obviously, our goal as designers is to be very sensitive to the historical character while creating a design that really complements the existing. And I think one of the things worth mentioning is on the north side, which is the addition entrance, that would be a new grand entrance for the building that would match the scale and quality and energy of the original south entry of the building. And what you'll notice in the concepts is the existing building, the beauty of the front south facade will not be touched. It'll be maintained and preserved and still function as an entrance, but doing the expansion to the north side allows for a greater opportunity to develop a new main entrance that has a larger elevator off the entrance, a larger staircase off the entrance that makes for very efficient flow up and down the first and second floor of the building.
Mr. Waters.
Thank you for the outlook pictures. I agree. I think that they have you've done a good job capturing the historic look, but yet modernizing with the open windows. I think when you look at the existing library, it's kind of cozy, but it doesn't have that natural light where the large windows that you've introduced in this expansion, it would allow that light in. So it seems to be a nice addition, a good mix to what we already have. So thank you for looking at that.
All right, thank you.
And I'll just note that on the last page of your slide deck, you referred to some documentation that I know as part of the history of designing, evaluating and designing this proposed expansion. So there's a planning booklet from back in 2020. Does that include the public involvement piece of it? Because I know there was some public involvement, and maybe just to refresh everybody's memory.
Oh, great, go ahead.
That happened
Yes.
several years ago. Okay.
And I have it all on the website. So when FEH did that work, they did the design charrette over 2 days, and the booklet, the PDF we have online incorporates every written comment that anybody had.
Right, so there's a planning booklet, a facility assessment, and a conceptual design booklet, and those are all available on the library website and for people
Yeah,
to review.
so the slideshow tonight and the conceptual booklet that you have in your packet, I still need to get up, but I can get that up tomorrow.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions or comments for folks from FEH tonight? Okay, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Okay, we're on to agenda item 9B, which is a discussion/approval on selection of a firm for design, bidding, and construction administration of the Sandy Beach Restaurant facility. So if we would decide to move forward with the selection tonight, we would just need a motion for someone to approve one of the contractors who's submitted a proposal. So Drake, I'll turn it over to you to summarize what we've got here.
Yep, so we've got two proposals. Both appear to meet the minimum requirements of the RFP. One from Thrive Architects, who's headquartered in Waukesha, and the other from Galbraith Carnahan, who's headquartered in Wauwatosa. Thrive Architects came in with the low proposal at $118,950 for the scope of services that's summarized on page 39 of their document. Galbraith Carnahan came in at $159,444. I would note that there is some differentiation between the services provided that may show some of that difference in the number of meetings that are included in the proposal, as well as the number of site visits during the construction project. So Thrive caps the meetings on 6. Those are mainly meetings with staff, and they then charge their hourly rate for meetings of government agencies. Whereas Galbraith and Carnahan has 5 to 6 staff meetings built in and 3 to 4 meetings of the government agency. And then Thrive caps their site visits at once per month, whereas Galbraith Carnahan anticipated a 9-month construction kind of timeline, and they would anticipate being there 12 site visits during that time. As well as they stated they had a program management software that they highlighted that allows them to, that they require the builders to comply with as a condition of receiving the contract. And it has to do with pictures and things of that they upload, and so that they can resolve issues remotely as well. So there is some differentiation there. So the difference, that $40,000 difference, that may not be the difference that would be reflected at the end of this process. They both have hospitality and municipal client experience. So that's kind of a broad overview. From our perspective, both seem to be able to meet the goals of the city, with perhaps some minor differences and levels of services that they would provide for it. So it does become a matter of preference. The city council is not required to award to the low response. It's not like a public works project. Since this is a service, you can choose based on your preference and chosen justifications. So if there's questions, I'll do my best to assist. Again, Director Schreiner wasn't able to join us tonight. Both Attorney Drescher and Troy Evenson reviewed the proposals as well. We are targeting the biggest, I guess, time crunch on this timeline is trying to get the kind of estimates of probable costs and maybe some initial design work done in time to submit referendum language for the August ballot. So I believe that's, let's see, for the April ballot, the deadline is just within the next couple of days. So, 2 to 3 months ahead of time, we have to have that to the county in order to get language onto the ballot. So that is the largest time constraint that we have on us in this process.
Okay, thank you. And so then just to remind our audience, the referendum would be an advisory referendum for spending more than $500,000 on a city building.
That's correct.
That would be the ballot referendum that we're talking about, and asking city voters whether they would support that or not. Okay. Are there any questions?
I have one,
Ms.
Ms.
Quinna.
Curler. Mr. Daly, can you remind me what the estimated amount that we had budgeted for architect consultation was for this project?
For this year, with the amendment to the capital budget, we have, $1 million.
It's 1.5.
I think it's 550, 1,550,000.
Right, I believe that's correct, $1,550,000. We were anticipating 5 to 10% of total project cost for design services, so they're both in the ballpark there of a $1.5 million building. Again, we don't know what the final cost of that would be, but they're in the ballpark of what we are anticipating for design and construction administrative services would take for a project of this scope. So we would essentially be fronting these dollars and would reimburse ourselves. Our general practice would be to front these dollars and then reimburse ourselves from whatever borrow we would take on later in the year for the construction of this facility. you can roll those soft costs, those hard costs in the project and reimburse ourselves from the borrow to capitalize them essentially. So that would be the funding source.
Okay. I have a follow-up. Well, actually, I have a comment. In terms of the differences between the two, when I went and I looked through both of their proposals and went through and looked at the actual locations of what they have designed, and based on the things that we had talked about and what the restaurateurs were thinking of doing, I felt that the design of Thrive Architects was a little bit closer to what we were looking for in terms of how we wanted the Sandy Beach restaurant to look. And I don't mean that it's one versus another. There was the Bass Bay Brew House, which, by the way, was nominated as having the best patio of Milwaukee, which I felt was like, okay, that's pretty cool because, you know, we're expecting a patio location, and I think it's something worth noting. But then also Milk Can had some of that same ideas that were presented to us with regard to like metal and wood and things of that nature. In terms of Galbraith, I was looking at Fiddleheads mainly because of the roof deck and the way that we were proposing having a space on top of the roof, and I felt like the way that they presented that particular idea was effective. But in my opinion, I felt that Thrive was a little bit closer to what we were looking for. I also think that, yes, the $40,000 difference is appealing, and there's also the case that you had made where it could be, there is additional costs and we need to be wary of those. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Waters.
I would need to spend more time on this and ask some more pointed questions, but when you look at the two, they're definitely not the same quote. There's different components, probably more components in the larger bid. When you look at the landscaping, the engineering, mechanicals, electrical, plumbing, those things seem to be maybe over and above what is on the lower bid. So I guess when I look at it, my gut feels maybe one bid is 15,000 higher than the other. Just as a quick courtesy look at it, there could be more differences than that. But I guess maybe we need to go through a review process to review that. I thought they both had some really nice designs and could work well with us. I wasn't really putting one over the other at this point as far as the look and feel of some of the projects that they've done in the past. So.
Yeah, I can certainly follow up with more questions for them, or alternatively, I can request, if we would like to, we can request them to come to our next meeting and present.
That'd be a great idea. I don't know if others have the same opinion, but.
It sounds like we don't need to make a decision tonight, so we would have time to put it on our next agenda and either
I think
develop
so.
questions for you or have them present.
I think so. I don't think the 2 weeks is gonna, make or break our deadline. So I think it's appropriate to make sure we have the architect that we want to have to carry us through this project.
Is there any other questions or comment, Mr. Fields? No?
No, I'm good. I like the idea of having them come in and present, though.
I guess I just have one other comment. I had a little bit different take on the, which one I thought was more in line with what we were looking for than you did, Ms. Quidnow. When I looked at the Galbraith Carnahan, the examples that they gave, most of the examples were designing something new, whereas most of the examples that Thrive gave were remodeling or, repurposing something that was existing. I mean, the end results, I thought they all looked very interesting and, would meet our needs, but it seemed like Galbraith Carnahan gave us more examples of something that you're building from nothing, which is the site that we have. And so that made me feel a little bit more lean toward them. And some of the examples that Thrive gave of their municipal work were more sort of public works buildings rather than buildings that, a lot of the public would use. So those were some things I was kind of looking at.
I noticed that as well, and I thought about how that would affect necessarily the aesthetics that what we were looking for. But given that you can put veneer on anything and make it look nice, but the ideas, the concepts that they were discussing or that they proposed looked a little bit more like what we were looking for. However, I would assume or like to believe that any architect is going to take what we say as a suggestion and say, this is what we need to have it done. So in that opinion, I mean, I was just looking at what the proposals looked like, but I'm not going to make a decision right now.
Especially with them presenting in 2
Yeah.
weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to make a
But
decision
thank you
right
for the
now.
research, that was great.
Yep.
So it sounds like we'll be interested in having them or giving them the opportunity to come and present and answer questions at our next meeting, which probably is in 3 weeks, I think, given the schedule for January. But then we would probably need to select one at that meeting to stay on track for getting that first deliverable of the details for a referendum. Are there any questions in particular that council members can think of tonight that we want to make sure they address?
I would just like to understand the proposal and what the content of that proposal is, so we can compare the two equally.
Yeah, is it possible that they could have the same components wrapped up for us so that we know what we're getting?
Yeah, I'll ask them to present on their full scope of work that they're proposing and what's included in their cost proposal. And then hopefully you'll be able to compare the two, apples to apples. I'm sure they won't be entirely similar because of how each one of them chooses to conduct their business and administer their projects, but we should be able to nail down exactly, as Mr. Waters had stated, the mechanical, engineering, electrical, plumbing, landscaping, what is all included in that total cost. You can look through their consultants and kind of see, who they have assigned to what, to kind of get an idea on who they're planning to use, and they can probably touch on that and give a full picture for all of you.
Okay, that sounds great. Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, so we'll plan on having that continuing forward to our next meeting. So we're on to letter C, which is discussion and approval of the Strand Associates task order for the wastewater treatment plant facilities plan. So Drake, did you want to say anything before we have Travis go into his presentation? Oh, do you want to say anything before we have Travis give his presentation? Okay.
No, ma'am.
All right. Take it away, Travis.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Nice to see everyone again. Can we go ahead and start the presentation? Okay, so this is the next step in the process for facility planning at the wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. So just got about a dozen slides here, so fairly brief presentation. Some of this is going to be recap from our previous conversations, but I'm just going to give a brief background, and then discuss some of the project funding aspects that have been updated since the last time that I spoke here at council, and a reminder on some of the non-monetary factors for the planning at the plant, and then where we're at as far as next steps. Okay, so just a reminder on the background for the needs at the wastewater treatment facility. You have an aging plant that was primarily constructed about 30 years ago. So much of the infrastructure there is now beyond its useful life and is either worn out or is undersized at this point, resulting in treatment capacity limitations based on the Wisconsin DNR's administrative code that wastewater plants have to follow. We are also facing, as an entire state, lower phosphorus discharge rules that will come into effect in future permit here at the city. And generally, we see that with each permit term, there are more stringent effluent limits that are always being mandated by DNR. The city is growing and has plans to grow, so there will be increased influent flows and loads that need to be accommodated. Liquid sludge storage is a particular issue at the existing plant. The plant is nearing capacity as far as biosolids storage, so that will need to be planned for. As I mentioned, city growth needs to be accommodated, not just residential, but also opportunities for commercial and industrial growth. We've talked about moving the discharge location. Right now, the treatment plant discharges to Rock Creek here in the city. Relocating to a larger receiving stream such as the Crawfish River would provide much more flexibility with future effluent limits. And then just geographical constraints on the ability to expand at the existing site is definitely a hurdle that needs to be overcome during the planning process, especially considering flexibility for significant growth in the future. So really the decision comes down to performing major upgrades at the existing treatment plant site or constructing a new treatment plant at a location outside the city. So an update on project funding, if you recall, in around spring of 2023, we kind of put planning on hold for a while so that we could see how various funding opportunities shook out. In fall of 23, the city was notified that congressionally directed funding would not be available for this project. So that was one item that we wanted to know about before proceeding into the planning process, with exactly what project would take shape. Also, the updated intended use plan that the DNR issues for the Clean Waterfront program was issued in the fall of 23, and based on the scoring system that was implemented by DNR, the city's not eligible for Clean Water Fund grants. So there is funding for loans, but the city would not be eligible for grants, and that's primarily based on population and median household income is how they score that. And then we also met with the USDA. They also have funding programs for treatment plants, but grants were not available from USDA either. So what we did at that point then was proceed with calculating draft sewer rates for the new, for a potential new treatment plant site. And we assumed that Clean Water Fund loans would be used to fund the project, but that there would be no grants based on the feedback from these other programs. So there are a lot of needs at the existing site, and some type of project has to move forward, but we understand that there's a lot of dollars involved here, so sewer rates need to be carefully considered as a part of this planning process. And sewer rates aside, we had a lot of discussions about a new treatment plant outside of the city limits that would discharge to the Crawfish River, and technically from an engineering standpoint, that is the best technical solution, but But obviously, when we're talking about this many dollars, we need to consider the rate impacts to the city's customers as well, especially without the assistance of grants, as I had mentioned on the previous slide. So that final decision needs to be balanced between the flexibility that the new site offers and the rate impacts to your customers. So this table shows one scenario for sewer rate increases for phasing improvements at the existing treatment plant location versus constructing a brand new treatment plant on an existing site. And again, there's a lot of different scenarios that can be evaluated, a lot of different ways you can phase things, different assumptions that we can use for city growth and interest rates and all that. But just with kind of some base assumptions here, we assumed 1% annual growth in the city. We did not factor in inflation here, just to take that variable out of the equation. And this would, of course, be refined in further planning efforts once the exact project is known. But the striking difference between these two options here is that phasing at the existing site would allow the city to implement sewer rate increases over a 15 to 20 year time frame, versus if you construct a new plant, you'd have to have your rate increase complete prior to the end of construction of that plant. And so it's really an all or nothing. There's not really a way to phase in building a brand new site. You need to build it all at once and then switch over the flow. And also just the being able to increase the rates more slowly over time decreases the overall current increase above the current rates. So that's what you're seeing there. It's a much more gradual increase versus construction at a new site.
Travis, if you could go back to that for just a moment, I had a question. So for the left half, the scenario phasing expansion at the existing site, does that example keep the discharge point at Rock Creek, or does one of the phases involve moving the discharge to the Crawfish River?
That includes moving to the Crawfish River in a future phase.
Not at the beginning, but at one of the phases in that scenario?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so an option to mitigate that rate impact that we saw for the new site would be to remain at the existing site, and in all the conversations that we've had over the past couple of years on this, flexibility for growth has been an important subject. So, looking at a new technology with a smaller footprint, such as aerobic granular sludge, was an important consideration. And then phasing that expansion allows you to have that stepped rate increase over several years. But the needs at the existing site are significant, as I mentioned. So ultimately, when you look at this over several phases and over 20 years, the costs of construction are comparable to constructing a new plant at a different site. It's just that you're spreading it out over a lot longer time period. And if the city were to proceed with that option, the details of exactly what gets done in each phase and when you would propose to construct each phase would be determined in that facility plan, which would then be submitted to DNR for approval. And then that would be the city's roadmap for the next 20 years. Next slide. Okay. Comparison of capital and present worth costs. So put together one potential phasing strategy here. The most urgent need at the plant right now is influent pumping and headworks. Those processes are really at capacity now, and it would hinder future growth if that portion didn't proceed. So that would be phase one. Phase two would be adding additional capacity with the aerobic granular sludge system and some type of biosolids processing improvements. And then phase three, effluent pumping to the Crawfish. So as I mentioned, ultimately, the capital costs are about the same in this scenario at $50 million each. And the present worth costs between staying at the existing site versus constructing a new site are similar also, because you're generally spending the same amount of energy to treat that wastewater. It's actually a little bit less for staying at the existing site. It's less pumping, but in the grand scheme of these numbers, they are fairly similar cost-wise when you're looking out over 20 years. So just a recap on some of the benefits. So this is comparing staying at the existing site and going with a smaller footprint treatment process like aerobic granular sludge with discharge to the Crawfish River versus constructing a whole new plant. So you already have a significant investment in your existing site, and you can leverage that to phase these improvements. Discharging to the Crawfish allows you to keep that less stringent phosphorus limit. You have the significantly reduced rate impact that we discussed. And if you go with these different processes that have a smaller footprint, it will allow you to keep all your facilities on one site, which we'd previously discussed possibly having to buy additional land for biosolids storage. And it would allow for future expansion as well if you were to go with some of these tighter footprint processes. So the benefits of going to the new site, primarily you get that buffer between the treatment plant and residences. The existing site is located in a both residential and commercial area. I think if you were going to pick any site, that's not the site that you would pick now, but that's that's the hand that you're dealt. And you'd have substantially more space for future expansion at a new site. It would give you the potential to improve Rock Creek. You'd certainly have all your facilities on one site, and going to a whole new site would basically allow you flexibility to select any technology because you wouldn't be worrying about footprint.
Just a minute, Mrs. Bishop, do you have a question?
This is maybe a point of order. Can I ask what we're being asked to consider tonight in regard to this presentation?
I believe we're being asked to consider
the task
authorizing
order.
a task order to create a facilities plan. Is that correct?
Sure. So this council 2 years ago already passed a motion authorizing research and moving into looking at a new location, and it's a new plant and a new location. So we've already made that decision. But now we're getting a presentation yet again from Strand. I wonder how many times we've paid them for the same presentation, going back to basically step zero to look at it all over again. So can we just refine the scope of what we're actually being asked to look at tonight?
Drake, I wonder if you can address that. I know we have, as part of, well, I'll let you go ahead.
Sure. So I guess right after I started, one of the first things that I was sent on was a tour of a facility in Rockford, Illinois, of the aerobic granulated sludge.
Aerobic granular sludge,
Aerobic
yes.
granulated sludge system that significantly reduced the footprint of treating the wastewater within the with what's coming into the plant versus the oxidation ditches that we have now. It was kind of communicated that the introduction of this new technology was new information that the city council had not considered when it had made its previous decision. And so the Public Works Board undertook an additional evaluation of the pros and cons of creating a wastewater treatment plant on a new site versus retrofitting the existing plant on the existing site, which ultimately resulted in the recommendation that's before you now to create a facilities plan, and then submit the facilities plan to the DNR for the retrofitting of the wastewater treatment plant, the existing wastewater treatment plant at the current location, rather than pursue the purchase of land and construction of a new wastewater treatment plant. And so I think it was my understanding, it was the introduction of the new technology that was available that warranted the additional evaluation for consideration by the Public Works Board and now ultimately the City Council. And then incorporated the rate impact analysis into that evaluation.
Ms. Curley?
So tonight, we're being formally asked to reconsider our decision on a previous motion 2 years ago. And that's the basis for Strand's presentation right now.
Essentially, yes. I guess we can consult with Attorney Drescher if the City Council considers the new information to have been significant enough to warrant additional consideration of the item.
I don't think I've heard anything new yet. Maybe I'm missing something, but.
Mrs. Curler?
Yeah, Mr. Fields.
I was previously on the Public Works Board. If you go back to our November 9th, 2021 meeting, the Public Works Board voted to send option 3 to the City Council as their choice. They had taken options A and B off the list and said that the new plant was the direction that the Public Works wanted to go. And the granular was on the list at that time because you had an A, B, and C. And that's what we were going to look at. And that's what the City Council voted on to move forward with. So I'm curious as to why it went back. And now the Public Works Board, did they just change? Did they vote to amend what they sent before? Did they start all over from scratch? I guess because back on November 9th, 2021, the option they sent to us was option C, the brand new
Point of
plant.
order.
Yes.
Mr. Waters.
That vote was a 3-3 tie, so there was no recommendation made to City Council.
Well, and then the follow-on was the City Council took all of that information into account and in a 4-1 vote approved option 3, which was the new plant, new location.
I would like to go back and look at that because I thought it was a 3-2 vote that it was approved to take B off the list.
From the Public Works Board?
Correct.
Yeah, I think that would be maybe worth going back to just verify the history. I think there was a majority vote of the Public Works Board to take option 1 off the table, which was existing site in Rock Creek, but then I think that they were divided on the other 2, and it was up to the City Council to choose who chose option 3.
Actually, they took A option off in October, and the B option was taken off in a 3-2 vote in November. But please go back and verify.
So I think the point of order that we have here is, that Mrs. Bishop is raising, is why we're being asked to approve a task order for upgrades at the existing site when this council has previously decided to ask for a new construction.
Essentially, yeah, without doing a motion or reconsider as the in-between step.
Or without the council directing.
Right, exactly.
Have it be reevaluated. Mr. Waters.
I do understand what Mrs. Bishop is talking about or requesting tonight. Since I've been on the Public Works as of April when the reassignments were made, May when the reassignments were made, this was on the agenda from that point, before that point, actually, and it was being reviewed, and the recommendation that was made in November, December Public Works meeting was a 6-0 vote to go with the staged process, which is what Travis is presenting tonight. So just to give you some background, this has been in Public Works for probably a year or more, being reviewed by Public Works. So that's how Travis got in front of us today, because Public Works did approve or recommend to City Council the phased proposition or proposal with a 6-0 vote. So,
Ms. Quinn.
I I'm going to agree with Ms. Bishop. My memory is serving the same information, and a lot of the discussion, if I recall, was about how the current land space isn't suitable to meet the needs of what we were considering as a growth issue, not issue, it's a good thing, but reaching the needs of business owners, that potentially we have another kind of business park, north of the interstate. This was not something that was feasible. Not only that, but it's encroaching on other people's property. It kind of butts up against the trailer park there, and I just, we know that when they put that in there a long time ago, that was not a space that had residents. And there was a lot of area it was still farm. I think that we need to kind of think about that in terms of moving forward. And I agree with Ms. Bishop. I really, really remember there being a decision that we were going to buy land and make a new one.
I guess I'll add some of my own thoughts. Number one, I'm 100% confident that this council voted to move forward with constructing a new plant, and we have not given any different direction on that. We do have, as Mr. Waters said, the Public Works Board has been continuing to discuss it. Our city manager's been looking for federal funding, looking for other options that would ease some of the burden of constructing that new plant. I think we've been told that a new plant would be probably the most expensive in the state, so it's a big deal to be constructing a new plant. I think we're all aware of that. I guess, so I would also affirm that I think that that's where this council has left things, is that we voted to move ahead with a new plant. I have a question then. So what is doing a facility plan on whatever direction we want to go, is that the next step in the wastewater treatment plant development process?
If the city, yes and no. We need to have a facilities plan submitted to the DNR. That is the next step. If we're going to build a new wastewater treatment plant on a new site, we need to obtain land.
So to that point, I'm going to be purposely vague because I believe it was a closed session.
It was.
We had a discussion and we gave Strand revised parameters to go back and do some more research. And that was the last conversation we ever had, and we never heard back. And now, turn out, they've been in meetings for the last year with Public Works Board to do something totally opposite of what this council decided. Honestly, I think we should get our money back from Public Works Board at the very least, if not Strand, for that. So I'm a little pissed off about that. But second, then to come back after we had that discussion, giving revised parameters and what we thought was necessary for the project, to hear nothing back, and then to go back to what I feel like is even a setback from step zero on this whole process 2 years later is pretty disturbing.
Do you remember what time frame that was, Ms. Bishop? The closed session?
I was looking for that meeting specifically. It had to have been after our decision, I'm thinking, on February 15th, 2022, but I did not find the specific meeting agenda. But I remember there were other members, I believe, of other boards there, and it was a closed session, and we were presented some very specific information.
It was a joint closed session with the Public Works.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
So, question, is it because there was a lack of government funding that we were potentially thinking was going to offset the cost of buying land and building a new wastewater treatment? Is that the difference that we're being presented with now versus what we were presented with before? Because that's the only difference I can see at this point, that now we know that there's no government funding that can help offset that cost. Is that accurate?
I mean, I guess it's possible that at the start of my tenure, I misunderstood what the council's desire was in the evaluation of this process. I remember conversations, with concerns about having the highest rates in the state of Wisconsin for sewer rates with the existing, with purchasing new land and building a treatment plant on those sites. I remember disagreement among, members of City Council, Public Works Board about what the correct path forward. I remember conversations about whether, the technology had been evaluated for what could go on. There was talk about trying to obtain additional funding. That additional funding is not available. So I guess from my perspective, I guess I don't know, maybe I'm not fully aware of what information the city council had 2 years ago during that recommendation. I was under the impression that there was a surprise or a shock at the financial impact on the rates of building a new plant on a new site, which caused a decision, a desire to take another look at what was possible and what options existed.
So to answer my question, yes, because I don't believe that we knew the last time we were considering option C. We knew that there was any kind of, we had hope that there was going to be some kind of grant or funding that could help offset. But now I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing that there isn't going to be that. So we have to reconsider how it is that we're going to address the need of the community while not giving them a huge amount of cost at the same time.
That's one of the considerations. Yes, there is no outside funding available. The city will fund the project through its ability to take out revenue bonds through the Clean Water Fund is the option that exists for us.
Okay, I personally think that having that knowledge before coming here would have been helpful to understand the context, because without it, I was a little bit lost, like, why are we looking at this information again, right? And nothing against you. I was having deja vu and thinking, oh my gosh, did I have a dream about this? Because I'm pretty sure I didn't have a dream about wastewater treatment plant. That would be weird. But the point is that without having that context, without knowing the reason why we're looking at this again, it was a bit frustrating. And moving forward, I think it's important that we have, I mean, you did say it in there, but I think even further context would have been helpful. Like, I know that you recently, or that 2 years ago, you had decided that you were going to do this. Here's where we're at with things. This is why it didn't go through. And now we have to look at this a different way. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so
yeah.
it wasn't that information. Now it's making sense a little bit more, but prior to didn't make any sense. So apologies for interrupting your presentation. It's good information, but now with that in knowledge and that context, it really helps with seeing things from a different point of view. I think the point of view that maybe the Public Works wanted us to see, and perhaps because Public Works didn't necessarily give us, like the context, or they didn't tell you to give us the context, that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay.
I think based on this conversation and the issues that council members are raising, at a minimum, there's been miscommunication between the council and the city manager and the Public Works Board and our consultant on what the next step is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, unless someone finds some different information, the last decision that the council made, I believe Mrs. Bishop is correct, was that we made a decision to move forward with a new plant on a new site. And the next step in that, from what you've described, Mr. Daly, is to purchase property before we would be doing a task order to create a facility plan, right? First, we would need to have a property in mind to do a facility plan on. Is that correct?
Correct. We can't create a facility build-out plan without knowing where it's going to be built.
Then we're kind of at a standstill, aren't we?
So there wouldn't be any action on, if the council is in agreement that, our past decision stands, we would not be able to take an action on this task order tonight. So I guess then we would need to decide, do we want to entertain a follow-up discussion on the record about whether we should revisit that decision, or do we want to just direct the city manager and staff and consultants to continue on the next steps for a new plant?
If the city council wants to build a new wastewater treatment plant on a new site, then I think this conversation can just end. And the next time you hear anything from this will be a list of properties that you can pursue.
I would make a motion that the city council review the Public Works Board recommendation, which saves each resident over $5,000 over the next 15 years, each household $5,000 over the next 15 years.
Can that just be a future agenda item?
Yeah, can we table it? I think so. Would it be advisable to table this?
No.
Okay.
So,
'Cause this is
Mr.
not
Waters,
the topic.
you're making a motion that we have a future, I'm sort of amending it, that we would have a future agenda item where we would discuss the recommendation of the Public Works Board?
Yes.
Is that a sufficient motion, Mr. Treasurer? Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Waters and seconded by Ms. Quednow to have a future agenda item to discuss the Public Works Board's recent recommendation on wastewater treatment plant. Any discussion?
Yeah, I've got a quick question.
Mr. Fields?
I was surprised to see this come up again also, and going back here to all this phasing and construction costs, and this is in today's dollars, they're pretty equal, apples to apples. I went and I took the phasing costs and said that we would do phase 2 in 10 years out and phase 3 in 10 years out, and I plugged in actual inflationary adjustments and then put a little bit of 5% interest on top of that. I used 2.5% interest. The historic average over the last 106 years has been 3.1, so I was conservative. We would add 16,900,000, something like that, in additional costs to what's projected in this phasing if we phase this in over 20 years. So you can say we're saving the residents money, but if you actually do the real costs and plug it in with financing and with just a cost of living adjustment, inflationary adjustment, it could end up being more expensive by doing the phasing. We're trying to make a decision without accurate numbers again. And I hate this. Give us real numbers, everything broke down, so we can see it. We're not going to do all $50 million in the new plant up front. You probably got 60 million or 60% in the building, and 2/3 of your equipment costs. So maybe you're only going after 42 million, and then you're going to phase in the other 8 million over the 10 or 20 years, just like you would in your phasing. We need a real plan if you're going to change direction. I'm frustrated because I thought this decision was done, and we're going to make another decision without real numbers.
Mrs. Bishop?
Mr. Waters, I was clarifying that you were asking for a motion to just have this as an agenda item because I don't have Robert's rules in front of me, but a motion for reconsideration on an item previously considered would have to be made by somebody in the prevailing side, of which you are not. So if that motion for reconsideration was going to be made at the next meeting on the basis of this being an agenda item, I just want to make sure that we're all thinking about that before the next meeting.
So I believe the motion was for a discussion only on the Public Works Board recommendation. Is that correct?
Did you want to comment on that, Mr. Drescher?
No, that's
Okay. Yeah, well, it's the 4-to-1 vote. I was the dissenting vote. What I'm asking is that we review this and look at all the new aspects that was reviewed by Public Works. I think it's something that would be advisable for council to look at and consider before moving forward at this point. If I could make that motion, I would be more than happy to make that motion. If not, I guess I have to stand down, so.
Ms. Carler? I think that what Mr. Fields said, and I think that that's pretty important. We really need to see the cost analysis in extremely clear and concise ways, because otherwise we're all going off of memory or something to the effect that it doesn't make any sense. So I like Mr. Fields' idea as far as, okay, bring it back, but bring it back with more info and clearer info.
Do you need any more direction than that?
Well, I'm not clear on what, I didn't hear a motion to reconsider from you.
Right, we're having a
No, I didn't
discussion
either.
on we're having a discussion on a
Right.
motion, right?
Right. What I heard as a motion was bring this back to a future agenda to discuss new information that's been provided from the Public Works Board. There is, without debate, new information that the Public Works Board for the last year, as you have just stated, has been discussing. So if you find that, and I believe much of it is with regard to the financing of the proper project. So if you find that as worthy, bring a new agenda item forward and discuss it in light of the new information that's available. If the council changes tax or changes the direction that it intends to do, it's appropriate at this time. I don't know that it's really a reconsideration of previous action as much it is as a new decision based on information that hasn't been presented to the council before. You have basically competing recommendations from the Public Works Board, and this is obviously kind of a muddy gray issue where I'm not exactly sure where we're at and what the process moving forward has been. I have sat in all of the meetings. I have heard competing statements with regard to the expected costs, the expected savings. I have heard numerous statements regarding the effect on the ratepayers, kind of outrageous statements, not in a negative context, but outrageous statements with regard to the increase in rates that's expected if we bite off the whole nut right away and build a new treatment plant. There have been statements regarding the rates being the most in the state at that point in time, and I think it's worthy to take another look at this and for the council to give clear direction, especially in light of the fact that the city manager has been on the job for a year now and kind of inherited this issue. And previous statements from the council, I thought, were prior to his being brought up to speed and being involved in agenda setting and administration of this government. So I don't necessarily see a problem here if the council is inclined to revert back to, and it's not really even a revert, but maintain its previous action and go forward with a new location and a brand new development of a wastewater treatment plant, then this discussion probably is over at this point in time. Restate that direction and let's go from there. If that's not the case, I think this is an opportunity to be presented with new information and make a decision with as complete of information as can be provided.
So we have a motion to have a discussion at a future meeting. That's been seconded. I'm in support of that motion. I think if we're going to spend $50 million to just go back and refamiliarize ourselves with what decision we made previously and learn about any new information or factors that the Public Works Board took into consideration in making a new recommendation to us, I don't think that would be a waste of time, and it doesn't mean that we're reconsidering. So I think having that discussion to just make sure we're firm in our decision, or perhaps there's a motion to reconsider that comes up out of that.
I just want to clarify, the council can't make a motion to reconsider anymore. The time has passed.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that
You can
point.
make,
Thank you.
you'd have to make a motion. If you deem it necessary, you'd have to make a motion to rescind which can be made by any member of the body.
So I feel like just as a matter of course, Ms. Curler, like it's always appropriate for recommendations from lower boards to be brought to the attention of this council. And in part, I'm frustrated that this recommendation from the Public Works Board was not part of this agenda and not available for us for discussion tonight.
Any other comments or questions on this motion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to have a future council agenda item to review new information regarding wastewater treatment plant and recommendation from the Public Works Board?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
No.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Travis.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we have a number of people here in the audience that I think are here for agenda items J and K. So if there's no objection, I'd like to move those two items up to be our next items on the agenda. So we would move to item J, Ordinance 1262 next, followed by item K, Resolution 24-6. Is there any objection? Okay, so our next item is letter J, Ordinance 1262, a request for a zoning amendment. Misty, when you're ready, could you read that title for us, please?
Ordinance 1262, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance Section 660-44, official zoning map, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, parcel identification number 246-0713-1414-002, owner Barry G. Luce Trust and Thomas A. Boyks Trust, 265 South Main Street, Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Thank you. So this is the first reading of this ordinance tonight. We did have some testimony on it. Are there any questions or discussion that people have this evening? No? Okay, so that will be, Ordinance 1262 will be scheduled for our next meeting for a second reading. Now we'll move on to agenda item K, which is Resolution 24-6, which is a proposed development agreement for the Cottage Hotel Apartments at 265 South Main Street. Misty, would you read that title, please?
City of Lake Mills City Council Resolution 24-6, directing the city manager to execute a development agreement with Barry G. Luce Trust and Thomas A. Boyks Trust for the redevelopment of 265 South Main Street, Lake Mills, Bayberry Cottage Inn.
Thank you. Do we have a motion, please?
I
We have
move,
discussion first?
We can, certainly. Mr. Daly?
You don't want to have discussion first?
I
You
thought
want a
we had
motion?
to-
Usually we put a motion on the
Yeah.
record, but we don't have to, I don't think, right?
No.
Okay. Mr. Daly?
This is the development agreement for the Cottage Hotel. You'll remember previously the precise implementation plan and the general development plan were previously submitted and approved. The development agreement is required as part of the PDD overlay, which is the zoning change that was just previously read. Mr. Luce is here if you have any questions of him, but it's a redevelopment, essentially a gut of the existing facility, building 9 apartment residences, a redo of the exterior, essentially a gut and complete renovation of the existing building. It requires a PDD overlay because of the density on the site. I will note that we did discover there was a mistake. An old stormwater civil plan was included, was sent in error. The updated one has been attached to the packet, and that does show the stormwater draining basically across Veterans Way there into away from the property into the wetland there, so it will not drain onto a neighboring property. If there's any questions, we will answer them. This is the development agreement is a requirement under the ordinance for the PDD overlay. So you don't have to take action tonight. You can wait until the final reading of the zoning change, since the zoning change is also required in order for this project to move forward. But this is the execution of the development agreement is the final step towards allowing the property owner to obtain permits and begin the project.
Mr. Waters.
On the development agreement, there's a couple blank spots. One is dealing with the electric utilities. The financial guarantee shall include blank to guarantee payment of the costs for such electric extensions. And there's another one left blank for the financial guarantee shall include blank to satisfy the guaranteed amount required in this paragraph for cost to construct, contemplate public infrastructure and improvements. Should there be dollar amounts in those blanks?
Yeah, and the proposed resolution actually addresses that issue, saying that those numbers will be included in the future. We don't really have clear estimates at this time. I do have pieces of estimates, and I'd say that it needs to be updated prior to finalization of the development agreement. The code is clear based on what the surety obligations in that circumstance will be, and what we'll do is based on engineers' estimates and then comply with the code for the amount of the surety and then move forward from there. So that will be finalized prior to execution.
Execution of this agreement?
Yes, and certainly of redevelopment of the property of the project itself. So,
Ms. Carver?
Sorry, Ms. Quidna?
Yes, I have questions about the timeline of all of this information. I note that there appears to be a Plan Commission motion from October 3rd of 2021, and then a plan motion from July 2nd of 23, and here we are in January 15. Well, sorry. Here we are talking about it. So I'm just curious as to what happened between 2021 and 2024.
The original Plan Commission meeting was a hearing that was held to address the public concern regarding the proposed zoning amendment that's required by our ordinance. We contend that that hearing was held and that you have a recommendation from the Plan Commission as a result of that hearing. And that is included in your packet this evening. That did happen just over 2 years ago. The subsequent meeting of the Plan Commission this summer, part of the PDD overlay requires the general development plan and the precise implementation plan to be presented and to be recommended upon by the Plan Commission prior to the zoning amendment going through, prior to the PDD overlay being authorized by the City Council. That general development plan and precise implementation plan were reviewed at the July Plan Commission meeting of 2023. Those documents are included in your packet as well. Those are the crux of those two meetings. The entire project packet has basically been deemed finalized at this point in time and ripe for council review and action if appropriate.
Thank you for that breakdown. And I did read through most of these documents, and I have a few questions about the plan for that. Is this the appropriate time to ask?
With regard to both the PDD overlay and the development agreement. The council has broad discretion in addressing desirable terms or allowed actions in the context of authorizing the development agreement or proceeding to the PDD overlay and the zoning change.
Then I'll hold.
So maybe just to clarify, and I think I might have a question with this. What's in the resolution is, would be the city council authorizing this development agreement, which would authorize the plans, the general development plan, et cetera, that has been developed, subject to building permits being issued by the city. But this essentially would represent what the city's approving to occur on this property under the Plan Development District, which gives the city latitude to allow certain things that wouldn't normally be allowed in that district
In the R312,
exchange
the
for
parent
other
district,
things.
correct.
Right, okay.
I think that's a decent synopsis. The general development plan and PIP, precise implementation plan, are both incorporated into the development agreement, as are other construction documents and then the terms of the development agreement itself.
So one thing that I believe you just mentioned, or maybe Mr. Daly mentioned, is the stormwater treatment, and that updated plan has been attached showing the stormwater going underneath Veterans Lane. That was one of the concerns that we heard from the neighbor. Are there other areas, and I guess I'll just ask staff generally, whoever might know, other concerns that the neighbor raised that have been addressed in the course of these plans being developed? I know there's some setbacks, fire escape.
The PDD overlay, which allows relaxation of certain bulk requirements, is planned in this circumstance to create an allowance with regard to parking, to create an allowance with regard to setback requirements, and to create an allowance with regard to density. That is the reason for the PDD overlay in an R312 multifamily district for this redevelopment opportunity. So that change does give the council latitude to engage in some form of give and take with regard to the development project as it sits. My opinion is that there's kind of two ways to address that give and take, either through the development agreement and the approval of the plans that are incorporated into the development agreement, or by creating restriction on the property itself in light of the PDD overlay. Does that answer your question? Is that decent?
I think so. I guess I was more wondering about some of the specifics concerns that the neighbors raised. But I think what you're saying is that if there are additional concerns that the council has, we can address those through the process of making this decision.
Yes. I think the other specific concern that the cops brought up specifically was the fire escape on the south and east side of the structure, the general state of disrepair, and whether or not this structure could be brought back to a compliant phase or status. And then any other specific understanding that you have from the letter, but that's what I heard. I think the stormwater has been addressed, as you've stated. That was addressed previously to this meeting.
I have an additional question. I noted that there was a discussion about parking, and that the residents, when there are residents in this particular building there to do street parking. I have concerns about street parking with regard, especially because we are in winter and there are winter rules.
It's not solely street parking.
Okay.
The allowance with regard to parking is that based on the size of the site, I don't believe that it is capable of accommodating the required amount of parking for such a development in this particularly designating zoning class.
Yes, I did.
So the allowance is, we're simply not going to require the bulk requirement that is in the code regarding parking, because the site itself cannot, it doesn't have capacity. Where extra cars end up, I mean, would likely be the street or some other form of public parking that is available. For instance, B1 zoned properties, downtown businesses, there are no parking requirements whatsoever because there's adequate street parking despite winter rules.
Okay,
Not a single business downtown has a standalone parking lot.
right.
Okay, so compare this structure to new development, Riverwood, the Summer Ridge apartment complex, and look at their parking map. Or the Drumlin Crossing or residential facility North Oak south of that. It was a brand new kind of green space that was converted, and they were required to comply with necessary or compelled parking requirements under the code. With regard to this, one of the allowances that's afforded under the PDD overlay is not to require that specific, that strenuous, or that demanding of a parking map, because the site just simply doesn't have space for it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Fields, his question.
Oh, Mr. Fields.
Yeah, just looking at the map here, I know it says it'll be dressed in the future, but like with snow removal, with as much asphalt and parking they had there, there's just physically not going to be spots to put the snow. Dan, maybe you can help me out with this one, is if you're looking at emergency services, even with when we were looking at the Holiday Inn out there, how are we going to get large vehicles in there, being that there's a multi-story, a 3-story building? Can we get a ladder truck in there? How are we going to get a couple of vehicles in this situation with basically a dead-end driveway?
Well, one of the parts of the give and take between the developer and the city with this proposal is that there's an ingress egress access afforded to easement access afforded to the city for emergency vehicle use. Being its location is so close to the fire department, it's on Veterans Lane, there is no other access to Main Street for the fire department. The city did plan to secure an easement for emergency vehicle use in this area, in the existing driveway that is there. Is it sufficient to get fire apparatus into the site? Certainly. A ladder truck, perhaps not. It's pretty close. There are adequate facilities available. There's hydrants, and just the proximity to the fire station right now would allow for them to probably set up on Veterans Lane and then run hoses to the site if something were to occur. And I think the other consideration there, just quite frankly, is if you compare its current status and what it is as a potential fire hazard to what it would be if it was updated appropriately and redeveloped, I think that would be a win for the city. If you just compare its current state to what the expectation of redevelopment would be and would provide, it would be a win with regard to the provision of such services.
I just have a hard time looking at this and seeing how they can make it work if they got to come up to code with sprinkler systems and other items for multi-resident use like this.
With regard to sprinkler systems, that's one of the main points of an estimate. There is a requirement to extend from the Main Street water main a subordinate main. It is classified as a main to the site, into the site, and both fire suppression and all of the service laterals will come off of that into the site main, and that is at the far north end of the site along the same access drive that exists right now. And that's one of the characteristics of the design that I would contend improves the prospect of emergency service being provided at the site. And specifically, because you brought it up, specifically, there is a requirement that there is a fire suppression system throughout the building because of its use, the proposed use.
Right. Yep, that would be perfect, because that's what it needs to do. Is that road that runs to the west out to the back of the fire department, is that serviced year-round so that they could use that road to gain access from the west side?
It simply would have to be from this point forward. In light of what's being there, what's being planned, what's being provided with regard to ingress, egress, parking requirements, everything, yes, it would simply have to be. Snow removal, access at all times, yes.
Would we have to do any kind of upgrades to that road to carry the weight of the vehicles that could potentially use it?
I don't know that that's been examined adequately at this point. I expect that the entire surface is relayed based on this redevelopment plan, but I don't have information on that at this point. That's a fair question.
Yep.
A couple of the things that you brought up, Attorney Drescher, I think are good for us to keep in mind, that what the planned development district contemplates is that there's this trade-off. And so there are some areas where there are, some benefits to the community in terms of fire service from having this additional fire lane. I think there's also the property owner's intention to preserve a historic building. And that has, some value to the community. And so then we're trading those values with, some other aspects such as smaller units or, not having a complete setback. So that's kind of the conversation I think that we're having. I'm wondering if, because some of this information was just added today and there's a lot to digest, if the council would be interested in just continuing this over to the next meeting so that there's more time to digest the documents and feel comfortable with what decision we might want to make. Mr. Waters.
I'm not going to make a motion tonight on Resolution 24-6 because I feel like we need to give Ordinance 1262 the opportunity to go through its course, to go through the three readings and reestablish this property from a single residence to a multifamily resident situation. So I would not make that motion tonight.
Mrs. Bishop?
Yes, sorry. I think I would actually tend to agree with Mr. Waters on this, and that's also in light of a comment Mr. Daly made about the timing of the two pieces. I see that we may be granting a property right to the owner in passing the developer's agreement without yet ratifying the zoning change on the city side. So if that were to not happen at a later date, it could cause us issues.
I would like to just very wholeheartedly agree with you there. The development agreement is solely required because of the PDD overlay, because of the zoning change that has been proposed. If that's not going to go forward, or you need time to address that through the three readings that is required, certainly take that time. And I would absolutely have restraint in likely not pass or authorize the development agreement in the event that that doesn't go anywhere. The reason that it's included in your packet in this manner is just so you have full information and trying to button up the timeline and make sure that we're being as transparent and complete, comprehensive as possible at this point in time. It is the time that we have received what we as city staff and administration contend are complete plans for the redevelopment of this site. So this is your first impression. You have a zoning ordinance amendment that's in front of you, along with a proposed development agreement. And as I explained before, with regard to the PDD overlay and the development agreement itself, the council does have discretion to insert itself into those actions and documents.
Could we expect to have those dollar amounts on a development agreement by the final time? Would that,
if we go through three readings.
If we go through three readings.
If we go through
then
three
we would
readings,
have-
I'd be very confident. It's been being worked on for a good long while. I do have tentative numbers. I want good current numbers in light of how long this has taken to get in front of you, and just to make sure that the city is secured, that the developer is going into this with his eyes wide open in what is necessary here. And we're talking about kind of the low impact stuff. The actual surety is only based on the public improvements, which we're really just looking at the stormwater and the extension of that water main. So it's not that significant, especially when you compare it to past developments that you have seen and the surety and the releasing of surety processes that you've engaged in. So we're looking at a couple $100,000s of dollars as surety or letter of credit as opposed to several or $1 million.
So I have one last question. There is a schedule within the development agreement for completion of the project. If we don't authorize this development agreement for 2 more meetings, is that schedule still reasonable, appropriate? And I guess maybe we need to ask Mr. Luce the same question.
I think so, based on when, right now, the developer does have state-approved plans, but they're going back for an amendment. The amendment is reducing from 11 units to 9 units, and I'm not sure, there may be other slight changes. What we've been told is that that's a shoo-in, that the plans are going to be amended and that we'll have state-approved plans. The current schedule that's included in the development agreement basically establishes an 18-month period of time from start to completion of the project. There can be landmarks added into that. There could be more clarity in what the development plan looks like. However, it is generally, at least my position, I think generally city administration's position, that once the developer is going forward, we're not looking at affecting or necessarily dictating their means and methods with regard to redevelopment. However, we would like for, once this process is started, for it to continue. So your question, the soonest that work will start there and building permits will be pulled at the city level is March this year, early spring this year anyway. So I think you have adequate time right now to go through this process deliberately and still maintain that schedule. However, I'm certainly open to, and especially if the developer has desires or reasons to refine that timeline and to make sure that we have something that is clear and certainly workable.
Okay, well, I think, sounds like there's a general sentiment from the council that we hold this item over for the next meetings, concurrently with the ordinance 1262 for the zoning amendment. And then we can hopefully have some of those financial amounts filled in, and we can look at whether the schedule, and certainly the developer can talk with city staff about whether that the schedule is still will still be workable. I know, as Ms. Quidnell kind of alluded to, there's been a lot of time from the developer and from city staff to get to this point. So I want to make sure that we can fill in those final gaps. Any other questions or comments on this resolution tonight? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll look for those on a future agenda then. So I think on our agenda, we are back to letter D, which is Resolution 24-1 for an updated capital improvement plan. So Misty, when you're ready, can you read that resolution title for us?
City of Lake Mills City Council Resolution 24-1, resolution adopting the amended 2024 through 2028 capital improvement plan.
Is there a motion, please?
I move to approve Resolution 24-1, resolution adopting the amended 2024 through 2028 capital improvement plan.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Quidnell, seconded by Mrs. Bishop. Mr. Daly?
This reflects the reductions, it reflects the reductions in the 2024 capital budget, and shows the addition of the ladder truck into the 2024 year of the CIP, and then the delays and moving of funds for the restaurant facility, and then the delay of the Public Works dump dump truck, and then it also shows the removal of the other fire department vehicles that Chief Russ had indicated would not need to be replaced within the next 5 years. So this is simply making the CIP reflect the budget amendment that the city council made.
Okay, any questions or comments? Mr. Waters?
I'm not sure why I didn't see this earlier, but on the fire department, it's much easier to see now that there's only 2 items listed. We have the whole EMS issue under consideration, and my thought was, should there be an ambulance included in maybe the 2026 budget or capital improvement plan?
There hasn't been any action by the city council to take basically to take action to expand the services of the EMS department, and so that's why there's no inclusion of any additional equipment for the expansion of that service. I don't anticipate our current ambulance will need to be replaced by that year, so that's why we don't see anything reflected in the CIP in that regard.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, on Resolution 24-1, which is adoption of an amended 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan?
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next item is letter E, Resolution 24-2 regarding building permit fees. Misty, would you read that title out for us?
City of Lake Mills City Council Resolution 24-2, adjustments to building inspection and permit fees.
Drake, do you want to do this one, or Troy?
I can start us out. And,
Okay.
But Troy, Mr. Evenson took a look at our building permit fees and made some comparisons to other area communities, and has discovered that we appear to be quite below the market in this regard. And in the memo that was included, if you look at a comparison of the same square footage of a new single-family home and compare that to the comparables that are listed there, we are the lowest of them all, significantly so in many of them, as well as taking a look at some of the other ones while we are in this process. For example, one that would likely be a reduction is the recommendation for the fence. A new way to do fence permits. Right now, it's just done under our build permit, which can result in a rather large permit fee for a fence that does not really require all too much review time of Troy's in order to get through. And then as well as looking at the $5 to $7 increase for the commercial remodels and additions, which would be more in line with area communities as well. If you have questions, Troy's available to answer them, but this is an area of revenue that the city is currently collecting less than its neighboring communities.
Are there any questions or discussion? Mr. Waters?
The fencing fee did grab my attention, the $50. Can you go over the reason for including that here and how that's different from the current process?
Sure. Right now, we use it as a standard building permit fee. So if you put in a $10,000 privacy fence, we take $5 per thousand plus the $35 base fee. So, you're starting to get $70, $80, $100 permit fees out there for fences in the subdivisions where I always kind of joke with these guys, it feels like a little bit of a money grab for a fence permit, where really I'm just making sure they're within our ordinance. And it's a little bit easier, I think, for billing up front when someone comes in to fill out a permit. There's just a straight $50 permit fee. It feels a sufficient amount for a permit. I don't feel like somebody should pay more for a permit because they're putting in a nicer fence, I guess is kind of how I view it. So the same amount of work is being done by me to review it and inspect it, so.
So it doesn't change the overview of
Exactly. It's the exact same process. It's just they're getting penalized for putting in a nicer fence is really how it comes down to. But that's the case for some of the other permits too, you know, building permits. If you do the $5 per thousand or $7 per thousand, you know, the amenities tend to add up and that's what you're paying for sometimes. But the fence permit in other municipalities where I worked, that seemed to be a pretty standard process, was a set fee for a fence instead of penalizing.
Okay. Do we have a motion here?
No, we don't have a motion yet.
I'll move to approve Resolution 24-2, adjustments to building inspection and permit fees.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Mr. Fields. Any further discussion or comments? Mrs. Bishop?
I appreciate the comment and the revision to the fence permitting. I think having standard fees for stuff like that just makes a lot of sense. Where I take issue with the bulk of this resolution is changing the construction permit fee more than doubling it. Our levy is based on net new construction, which means you want to bring new construction here. We're going to make a lot more revenue in property taxes that will be generated from new buildings than I think we will these permit fees. In addition to that, when we talk about affordable housing, which I know a lot of people have on their minds, or at least in the back of their minds, one of the recommendations to make housing affordable was to make sure that we have lower permitting and costs and fees at the municipal level. And that was one of the recommendations we got from one of our, I don't remember who it was, but a group that went out and did that for us, right? So that's where I kind of take issue with the increase in that fee in particular. I'm open to increasing a little bit. I'm not really open to doubling it. I think we need to remain competitive for new residential construction here, and I think increasing the fee by this amount is too much.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Evenson, I was wondering if, kind of in light of Mrs. Bishop's comments, it does seem to me that, well, I guess my philosophy on fees is that they should cover the cost of our doing business and not that, you know, it's intended to be any kind of a revenue source. So I'm wondering if that's anything that you can comment on as far as, you know, the cost that it takes to review. We have, you know, you've been with us for about a year now. You know, we've invested in having a full-time employee in-house to do this kind of work, and that comes with a cost too. So I'm just wondering if that, you know, if you or Mr. Daly have a perspective on, you know, kind of the cost of processing building permits.
I guess I'll touch on a couple of things. I agree with Ms. Bishop, but I've been with the city almost 10 years. We have not done an increase on fees in that time that I've been here. I can honestly say I don't think anybody's ever walked away from a project here for looking at the permit fees saying, hey, this is ridiculous. We can do business elsewhere. These permit fees are too high. So I don't know that we're going to lose any development or any sort of house building because of a permit fee where we're at. You know, we're still right in the middle of the ballpark, I think, if we go with the recommended fees. I don't know exactly if these fees cover the cost of my work here, but it's got to be pretty darn close, I would think. I guess I've never really seen the exact dollar amount of what we take in for permit fees and whatnot, but
yeah, it'll often depend on how much, you know, unlike other municipalities, we don't charge for a reinspection, right? So there's a whole list of fees that other communities and we charge that are not always, that don't always line up perfectly. And so some of it will be how much, you know, if a plan is submitted really, really well, a project is administered very well, and it's a simpler review process for Troy to complete, then it's cheaper, I guess, a lower cost for the city to complete its review of something. If it requires coming back to do things, if it requires additional communication because things are missing from plan sets, if they are needier, I guess I would say, for attention from Troy to be walked through certain requirements and aspects of things, then it's you know, more expensive of a service that the city is providing. So it will depend on sometimes the quality of the application just as much as anything else as far as what the cost of it is. You know, I'll say, you know, a lot of communities that contract out for building inspection, it'll be a requirement of those firms to increase building inspection rates to a certain amount, and it's usually an 80 to 90% of build permit revenue simply becomes a flow through to the building inspection. So it is, you know, I would have to look to see exactly if it's covering the cost of it. It likely doesn't cover the full cost, but Troy does other duties other than building inspection as well. So I wouldn't expect it to, you know, fully cover the cost of that. But we have had, you know, significant growth in construction in the city. So build permit revenue can be significant if that continues. I would have to do a check on what we ended 2023 on once we finish the full closeout of those financials to let you know what the most recent numbers was for revenue.
Greg, I have the preliminaries.
That'd be great.
66,662 in building permit revenues taken in thus far this year. Again, preliminary December numbers. Troy's budget currently is at 82,330,000 to date.
I would have to double check that budget number.
Are you talking about payroll?
You mean
payroll or
budgeted or expended, Sam, for 2023? Is that, were you saying that was what it was expended in 2023?
Yes, that's
Okay.
payroll and operational for 2023. Again, preliminary numbers.
Okay, that would make more sense. That number will be higher in 2024.
Okay. So I think with respect to the residential, just wanted to make sure I'm clear on this as well. In the memo, the comparisons that you show, the City of Lake Mills was fee for, you know, the specific size home was $1,191, let's say, and then it would go up to $1,759. So it'd go up by about, not quite $600.
That's correct. We can do a lower if the council prefers. We can go to 18 cents per square foot. I do think going, you know, we've gone at least 10 or 11 years without increasing them, so I do believe that some increase is warranted. If this is too much of an increase at one time, I would encourage us to do, you know, something more significant than only a few cents. But if the 25 cents is too much and an 18 cents is more palatable, we can certainly, we can do that. You know, any amount will be, any increase will be, you know, additional on top of it. We are, I think, undercharging for the service that we are providing for the permit review.
Do you have your hand up, Mrs. Bishop?
I'm thinking about something. I'm trying to think
Okay.
of the mill rate times like the value of a new 4,000 square foot house and the revenue that would generate. I can't do that math in my head, but I just think that that's more valuable at the end of the day.
I would certainly agree. If I thought that the build permit increase was going to deter construction from occurring, then I would agree that we should not go over that tipping point where
Sure.
we're so high that we are deterring construction from occurring. After speaking with Troy about his experience in other communities, I don't think that this is that tipping point. Obviously the value of revenue to the city of collecting property taxes on a property for years to come is going to dwarf that of the revenue we obtain from permit revenue. It would not be comparable. So we would not want to raise our rates to such a degree that we are causing people to say we don't want to build here anymore.
Again, not having all the data and knowing that every permit review is going to require a different amount of time, depending on the unique circumstances. It seems like the dollars that Sam just shared with us seems like, we're not covering the cost of doing business with our current fees. And we're not really quite in the ballpark of where other neighboring communities are. So it does seem justified to me. I'm supporting the fee increase as proposed. Any other discussion or comments? Okay, if
We
not,
also don't, it's difficult when you're comparing across communities as well, because for example, we don't charge a permit review fee. There's some communities that will charge an $80, $100, $150 fee right off the bat just for permit review. So there's different ways that you can structure your fee schedule to collect to cover costs or offset costs, I'll say, not necessarily cover them entirely, to offset costs but it varies. It's going to vary across communities as well. So, the memo includes the best comparison that we could have, that we could put together. It's imperfect, but there are other fees that get charged that aren't necessarily, there's the build permit fee, but there's also a plan review fee, on top of that.
any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, can we move to a roll call vote, please, on Resolution 24-2, which is adjustments to the building permit and inspection fees for 2024?
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
No.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, next item is Resolution 24-3, which is related to the Tower Street Certified Survey Map. Misty, would you read that title for us?
City of Lake Mills City Council Resolution 24-3, Tower Street Certified Survey Map Approval, Tower Street Cul-de-sac.
Is there a motion?
Can we have discussion?
Sure. Seem to be doing every other one differently tonight, so.
Sure. So this is a little unique in that it's coming to the city council and that certified survey maps can typically be approved administratively. However, the cul-de-sac in this CSM is considered substandard by the city's code. The city council can approve an exception to that, which staff is recommending approval for this. The CSM has been reviewed by city staff. It has been reviewed by the fire department. This is a significant improvement over the current condition on Tower Street and has been a goal of the city for multiple years. And this has been discussed, I believe, even at the city council level, two or three, maybe 4 years ago. and it had not yet come to fruition. So this is kind of the culmination of that work that now will allow for the completion of this CSM. It will result in total 4 additional buildable lots on that street. Prior to the submission of the CSM and development of it, one of the old homes was raised in that area, and so this is kind of the redevelopment of the Tower Street area that comes from when the city decommissioned that water tower, had it removed, had one lot that was developed and built on, and now this will round it out, I guess, if you'll forgive the pun.
Mr. Waters.
So what's the current state? How, there's not a turnaround, it's a dead end, I believe, is that correct?
That's correct.
So what's the width of that?
Thought it was
44 feet.
So 44 feet current, and if we go to a roundabout of 40, we're actually reducing it by 4 feet?
Oh.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the radius is 40, right?
Correct.
On the cul-de-sac bulb there?
Correct.
That's correct.
And the standard for a new cul-de-sac and a new development is what?
68.
68, okay.
Yeah, so I guess the 44 feet, that would be how much right-of-way there is there, so the actual width of the pavement, I'm not sure. Less.
So what's the hardship of doing a 68-foot radius on this cul-de-sac?
I believe the lots would become non-compliant and no longer buildable.
Okay.
And I don't believe we don't have the right-of-way to have a 68-foot cul-de-sac, so additional land would require to be dedicated. Those are the 2 main reasons.
So if it weren't for the substand, oh, go ahead, Mr. Fields.
Dan, maybe you can help me out like this. I'm trying to jog my memory, but I was part of this way back when. This goes back good 4 or 5 years, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to go over the history with you, Mr. Fields.
Yeah, because the owner took this project on to clean this property up for us. I believe he removed a bunch of concrete and some of the old water tower base at his own expense to do this.
He purchased the water tower lot. The water tower itself had been removed, but there was infrastructure underground that Mr. Homan did excavate and remove from that site. Part of that is on so the other side of this is, this did start 4 years ago. The city sold Mr. Homan land and then started engaging in design with him. If you look at the south side of Tower Street on the CSM that has been provided, there has been a CSM that's already been recorded that established new lots on the southern side of Tower Street here. That did create lots 2 and 3 on the south side that are denoted on this CSM. Lot 2 has been developed out. There's a house there, it's inhabited, it's occupied. Lot 3 has not been developed out yet. Then as you go north, you see the right-of-way, and then there's kind of that odd shape at the end of the cul-de-sac. That is continued right-of-way, and that provided access to the fire hydrant. That will be maintained as right-of-way moving forward, as city property anyway, moving forward to allow access to the hydrant. And that should aid in the emergency logistics of the site in the event that there is necessary fire service there. It kind of creates a hybrid. It's not just a cul-de-sac. It also has that hammerhead kind of aspect to it because we're maintaining that portion of the right-of-way. So the north side CSM that's in front of you right now, there has been a house that has been raised. There are new lot lines that are created based on this map, and we have ultimately 3 buildable lots. However, there is one house, the primary Homan house, is still in existence and will be maintained on lot 2 as depicted.
Thank you.
No, Dwayne just had,
28 feet back to back on the pavement.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a question on the CSM, the property just to the south, where the large phrase Tower Street, and then it says Lot 3 underneath that. So that existing Lot 3 from another CSM, does that wrap around part of the bulb of the cul-de-sac then?
it really doesn't. It ends in that point that you see, and then
Oh,
the
that's a
odd
lot
shaped
line.
kind of,
Okay.
you can't even really call it a rhombus. I don't know what that shape is. It's a parallelogram. It's not even parallelogram, though. I'm just going to keep talking. Anyway, that is the portion of right-of-way that I was just discussing.
So that's a city-owned?
Yes.
Kind of funny shaped parcel that the city owns, but that will not be technically part of the,
The lot itself, it is not
Of the
buildable. It will be
cul-de-sac.
owned and
Okay.
maintained as city property, specifically to provide access to that fire hydrant.
okay.
And so Mr. Holman is providing easements, you can see throughout it, utility access easements, utility easements, as well as easements that we can construct sidewalk on, that aren't actually in the right of way, but will be granted in order to have adequate sidewalk space as well as terrace space for snow storage. So we will have, it's a little narrower, the terrace space along as near the fence, the school district fence, but then it does widen to the full 6-foot standard that we have. So we have been working with the property owner to find a solution that's workable for everyone in this area that allows for those buildable lots and then, but still maintains, the fire department's desire for adequate turning radius, as well as that hammerhead, as well as ensuring that the city can put in the utility infrastructure and sidewalk infrastructure that it desires in the area, as well as having the benefit of three new additional lots for construction of single-family homes.
So once the CSM is approved tonight, those lots can be developed. Someone can move forward with selling them or developing them.
We'll have to complete we'll have to complete the infrastructure.
Oh,
but-
okay.
But yes, they'll be saleable, buildable, yes.
Mr. Waters.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 24-3, approval of Tower Street Certified Survey Map.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote on Resolution 24-3, which is approval of the Tower Street Certified Survey Map?
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item, letter G, is Resolution 24-4, amending the Special Assessment Fund budget. Misty, would you read that title for us, please?
City of Lake Mills City Council Resolution 24-4, authorizing the city manager to direct the treasurer to amend the special assessment fund budget.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 24-4, amending the 2024 Special Assessment Fund budget.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Mrs. Bishop. Mr. Daly? Sam?
If you recall, originally Phase 8 of Brookstone was a 2023 project. It was delayed at the developer's request to 2024. Unfortunately, during the budgeting process, we simply missed that $1.1 million needed to appear in the special assessment fund. So this is part, the city borrows for this, but then it is funded by the sale of the lots and the collection, and we recoup those costs at the sale of those lots. And so we need to amend the special assessment fund budget to accurately reflect that the project is occurring in 2024. because of the delay in 2023.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call on Resolution 24-4, amending the 2024 Special Assessment Fund budget?
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Misty?
Was there a motion?
Yeah, could you, Misty, who made that motion?
I did.
Mr. Waters
Mr.
made the
Waters.
motion.
And I
Thank you.
seconded.
Mrs.
And
Bishop.
Mrs. Bishop was the second.
Oh, wait, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you seconded the previous one. I
You're
didn't
right.
catch it.
Sorry.
Okay. We haven't been doing them
That
at
was
the
a quick
same
one.
time every time tonight, so. Okay, next agenda item is letter H, Resolution 24-5, related to reimbursing expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. Misty, would you read that title for us?
City of Lake Mills City Council Resolution 24-5, resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing.
Would someone like to make a motion on this?
I move to approve Resolution 24-5, declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, seconded by Mr. Fields. Staff?
This is an annual approval. It simply allows the city to reimburse itself for any expenses it occurs before we borrow the funds for a project. So we can then if we front it with general fund dollars, we can refill that with the proceeds from the borrow. Without the adoption of it, we can't do that.
Any questions or discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, on Resolution 24-5, declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, we are down to our last item under council business, which is Ordinance 1261. Can we have a second reading of that tonight, please, Misty?
Ordinance 1261, amending Chapter 27 Boards, Committees, and Commission, Article 1 Board of Review, Section 27-1 Membership, Article 2 Library Board, Section 27-5 Membership, and Section 26-6 Organization, Article 4 Zoning Board of Appeals, Section 27-11 Establishment, Membership, and Section 27-12 Organization and Meetings, Article 8 Economic Development Commission, Section 27-23 Organization, and Section 27-24 Membership.
Thank you. So that was the second reading tonight. So we can carry that over to our next meeting for a third reading. And that concludes our council business. So recommendations for future agendas. We have several items from tonight that will carry over.
Yep, the items carried over tonight, as well as I'll reach out to the architecture firms and ask them to attend either in person or virtually for a presentation on their proposals. And then there's the two items in my report on the ARPA funds, as well as the RFPs for engineering and planning services. Those are scheduled for February.
Okay, any other items that the council members want to recommend? Okay, seeing none, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.